Matt Dabbs from Auburn, Alabama. Give him a hand. Steve and Donna Meeks from Pioneer, Tennessee. Come on down. Grant and Robin Luton from Hartville, Ohio. Settle down. And there you have it. Now, I'm not going to introduce the other guys, but I am going to tell you a little bit about the ladies. I'll give you some information, though many of you already know Donna and Robin. Donna Meeks is one of the warmest people you could ever hope to meet. She has been a steadfast wife to Stephen through the many adventurous chapters in the life of their family. She is wise and understanding and was a great asset to Stephen a few years back when Beth Tikkun when they produced our Restoring Home series of interviews and lessons, if you've caught any of those. Stephen would agree that he is a much better man because of Donna. She consistently elevates the honor of the House of Meeks, their little kingdom, in ways that any godly husband would and should praise. She is a true woman of valor. Another woman of valor is our Robin Luton. And where do I start with Robin? Well, she wrote the book on the woman of valor, quite literally and figuratively. She served alongside her husband for 26 years as he led Beth Tikkun from its birth on to maturity. And she is still pouring into many in our community today. Robin, as you know, is a real treasure. Another introduction I want to make is a couple who is not here. Jared and Brittany Schatz. Whoop. Jared and Brittany were going to be the moderators for this discussion until they all got sick this week. They are very bummed about it, and they send their love. I had invited Jared and Brittany to moderate the hospitality panel because if you've ever been to their home, you'll know that they are quintessentially hospitable. Agree? Agree, everyone who's, yeah. Now, they have a lot going on in their life and their family. They have a lot of kids, with one more on the way. When do they do? Do you know? Next month, in February, okay. And how many would that be total? 7 children. And they have a gentleman from their congregation renting a room in their not big house. And at any given moment, if you enter their home, you'll see that there's a lot going on. And they make no apologies for it. They don't. What they will do is open the door and greet you with a smile and want you to feel at home in their home. Yes, Brandon. Yeah. That's right. They keep the door unlocked. Yeah. So this might be a very short panel discussion. The biggest lesson that I learned just from visiting the Schatz's home is that true hospitality has absolutely nothing to do with the physical space they inhabit. Nothing whatsoever. And it has everything to do with the heart of the people who live there. Okay? So, hospitality. Now's the part where I will just ask some questions and we'll just see how the conversation goes with our panel. So, help me, who wants to be the first to try to define the essence of hospitality? If we're defining terms, how do we define hospitality in a way that matters? Use your microphone, yeah.
I was going to say, I always have a little more to say than people might want to hear. But I define hospitality as facilitating connection. You are presenting an opportunity for people to know that they matter. Because everybody needs to know they matter. And when they walk across your threshold and you greet them with a shining face, which is part of the Hebrew essence of the word, hesed, which we get hospitality from, suddenly they know that there's a place that they are truly seen and they matter.
Anyone else?
And in Greek, you have two words. Well, we have an English word called xenophobia. You know what xenophobia means? Fear of strangers. Phobos is fear, xeno is like a stranger. And the word in Greek for hospitality is philoxenia. See the flip-flop? So instead of fear of strangers, it's the love of strangers. So in Hebrews 12:2, when it says, always entertain strangers, show hospitality to strangers, that's not three words, it's one word. Hospitality to strangers is just that word, which we would just say hospitality, but they brought the whole thing in there. So when you show hospitality to someone who you don't know, that's pretty special. It's special with people we do know too, right? But we can choose to fear the world, or we can choose to hesed the world, right? And I think that matters.
Well, since we're going to talk Greek, we have to talk Hebrew. And in modern Hebrew, it takes three words to say hospitality. It's sever panim yafot, which means present a beautiful face. And so it's not just a matter of opening your home, but opening your heart, opening your face is the window to show what's going on inside. And when you greet someone with a beautiful face, they don't really care what your house looks like. They know, as Robin said, they matter to you.
And what you're presenting is only authentic. It's not presenting a mask. It's not presenting the appearance of beauty and peace, but it is your face, and you can't and should not try to hide from it what is true. Yeah. Steve?
Okay, so I was just thinking Hebrew, Greek, Appalachian. Okay, so I'm going with my heart language here. Okay, I was just thinking that this me in a way I look at it, hospitality, and Donna's been great at it, really. It is saying to people, the effect is, it's saying to people, you're more important than my things. You're more important than things. You have great value. And that's why hospitality is so important. It's because that's what people need to know, is that you have value, great weight, and it's honoring people by not worried about what you have or don't have or how it looks and all. I mean, of course, I know the ladies prepare it, make it look clean and nice and neat. I know I can do a lot of vacuuming that I wouldn't do otherwise, but that kind of thing. But it is saying that you're important more than things, and I think that's a kingdom value.
As I've been preparing to do a couple interviews this weekend and some follow-up interviews later, I've been learning, what are some best practices for interviews, and I heard this funny story about this British professional interviewer who was given some advice by another Brit who had a thick accent, and he told them, well, here's what you do: you got to hold up. The person you're interviewing is like a jam scone, and you hold it up and just look at the jam scone. And the guy's like, well, it's like, oh, okay, all right. And this is like the guy who giving the advice was legendary in his interviewing. And so later on, he's like, yeah, he told me this weird advice that I should hold it up to the light. It's a jam scone. And his friend said, he said gemstone. But what you're reminding me of is that even in an interview, even in a conversation or connection, you're treating this person like something very valuable. You're holding them up to the light and just examining and seeing. And when you try to insert yourself into it, It's like, why? You have a gemstone. Each person coming into your presence is beautiful, is multifaceted, has something of the divine inside them. Hold them up like a gemstone and look at them. Not in a way that makes them uncomfortable, but in a way that makes them feel seen and valued and that they matter. Yeah. So this is the essence of hospitality, right? When I went to the Grand Judaica bookstore, I asked the bookstore guy there, who was probably a rabbi, because only a rabbi, anyway, I asked him, hey, I'm looking for books on hospitality, and he couldn't find any. And he was scratching his head, like, what? I don't know. Like, oh, this is weird. Huh. And he kept looking in his system too, nothing on the shelves, nothing in the system. And he goes, I got it. You're going to find hospitality in books on chesed, books on loving kindness. Hospitality is a subcategory of loving kindness, of love, of service, of sacrifice, of making them feel like they're more important than you are. Yeah. So that's the essence. Can we talk a little bit more about, how about this? How about, where do we get wrong the definition of hospitality? Okay. Into the microphone.
Martha Stewart.
Okay. Well, can you talk about that? Because this is a cultural question and an issue, right?
Well, I think in the West, Yes. Okay. I think in the Western society, we equate hospitality with entertaining. Hospitality is not entertaining. And so entertaining is something that the posh people do. But hospitality is something that disciples do. And I've been in some very posh houses, that's an English word too, but it's a Brit word, I mean, but very large, expensive, ornate houses, and the hospitality is very canned and lukewarm at best. On the other hand, I've been invited into mobile homes, sort of houses where the stuffing's coming out of the couch and there's pet air and things aren't as clean and pretty, but the warmth, the love that's there is real, genuine chesed, loving kindness and hospitality. So get the word entertaining out of our minds. Just throw that away. And if you have living quarters, then you have no excuse for not extending hospitality. Mm-hmm. At least that's how I see it. Mm-hmm.
We have a hospitality industry, right? We pay for people to do things that people used to do for people. Mm-hmm. So like Paul, when he traveled, he had traveling companions, and they always found places to stay because the inns were dangerous. You might get robbed or something. And so they look for people. And I know when we've moved across the country in different places, we've always had our people that we didn't even hardly know at first, but you have that alignment. And if you didn't know somebody, then you could have maybe Paul write a letter for you to get you in with somebody, because, it was all about the home. Once again, this in their world that was just so necessitated, but we farmed those things out to third parties. So it used to be you died in your home, and then you took care of the dead and buried them, and now you die at the hospital and the funeral home comes and gets you. And that's not wrong, but we've third-partied, we've insulated ourselves from some of our responsibilities on certain points that I think we lose a little connection with death, connection with life, connection with some of the deeper things.
Do you find that, any of you, do you find that in that progression where we delegate some of these tasks or functions that are best done in the home out to these third parties, then when we think, oh, I need to be doing more hospitality, we look to those third parties as to how to do it. And then that doesn't translate back, right? Does that sound true? Okay, thank you. That's a good talk. Yeah, question. Panel? What part does communication play in hospitality?
I think listening is the best communication. So when you have people over and ask them, tell me about what's going on. Catch me up. What's happening? You ask a few questions, and generally people will start talking about themselves or what's going on in their life. And just listen, and that shows a lot of respect. It shows a lot of value to that person, and it warms. I mean, people are experts on themselves, and if they aren't on other things. And I think Donna has been really good. She's not talking about this, but she'll take the ladies. A lot of times we'll go off in the kitchen or over that way when I'm with the guys sitting around on the couch or something. And they just start talking about making the food or something that's going on around there. The kids that are running around in dirty diapers or whatever is happening around. And so let's chit chat at first, but it's a conversation. And she's a really good listener. And I'm telling you, a lot of times before it's over with, they're off to the side with her asking about some very important, deep things. And she's listening to that as well. And not pushing for it, but available for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think communication, I think technology gets in the way of that, probably. It's okay to have a little music in the background or something kind of warm up the atmosphere maybe, but at some point it's really just listen and talk and be available.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is such a good answer, Steve, because listening means you're making room in your soul for the other person. And that's what hospitality is. And yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a perfect answer.
Donna or Robin, as you have lived your life and been a hostess in your homes, how have you noticed your own evolution in how you prepare for a gathering, what you think about while they're there at the beginning as opposed to the ending? Like what's going on in your brain while they're there? And the question is, how have you changed in your thinking about how to do this over the decades you've been doing this?
Okay, I will definitely need this for you to hear me. You have to prepare your heart first, like you talked about, Grant, and then I've realized now without kids, I used to have a lot of kids to help me get ready for a big group. I just have to prepare and plan out my days and all the different things that are included in hosting and having things ready, whether it's the meal plan, the food, getting the groceries, and then I just think of things that I want to ask people. So listening, but you have to start with a good question.
Mm.
And so I love learning from people. I love hearing people's stories. So I think about that and pray about that before people arrive. Just setting a stage for, and you're very good about that whenever we're at your house for Arab, there's always a question that you're asking. And last night, Pell's hosted and did such a great job of asking questions. I love that. So when you gather, you want to, it's so special because you walk away richer for having heard someone else's life story.
Mm-hmm.
And we can learn from everybody. So it's always a blessing. We always get so blessed, and I always want to bless. I want people to walk away feeling peace, feeling loved, feeling honored. And one thing I wanted to say, you had the Appalachian perspective. I want to give the African perspective. They are so hospitable, the tribe that we worked with, and they just wanted you, it was an honor to host. And they wanted to give you their best, always. And they would invite everyone else, the whole neighborhood, to get to be a part of it too. So I learned from them to open my doors and to not have to have everything perfect. It was not entertaining at all. It was very much kingdom. You know, God's kingdom can grow from my home. And I don't speak up easily, and I also don't think on my feet, so I might not say a whole lot more. One of the most important things I do want to convey is if you're in a family and you have children, including your children in hosting, is so important, not just the cleaning, but the motive behind it and helping them understand. And it will change them, and it will prepare them to always want to be servants and to be available to God in the kingdom. All of our children are very hospitable and love that, and have so many sweet memories of literally thousands of people that we've hosted. So it made a difference in their lives as well. And we disciple our children first. And as we're discipling them and discipling others, they're watching and they're learning how to do it.
Robin?
Not only have we enjoyed hosting many people over the years, but we've been honored with being hosted all over the place. And years ago, we went to a place in England, and a beautiful couple hosted us. And about halfway through the visit, I realized how much peace and joy I had in their home. And because I'm an analyzer too, what is it that Lynn is doing that made me feel so welcome? And here was the key. Beauty is always in balance of something. And Lynn, from the moment I stepped through her door, made me know two things. First, that she had anticipated my coming enough to prepare, but on the other hand, she wasn't fussing over me to where I felt like an inconvenience. So when people come to my home, I don't want them to feel like they've shown up unexpected and that I am inconvenienced and this is just too much. Because I have felt that way when I come to someone's home, and it's a terrible feeling. You just kind of want to leave.
It's icky.
Back out slowly. But on the other hand, you don't want someone fussing over you so much that you feel like you should back out slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to maintain that balance. And I want someone to come into my home and know that I've prepared space and time. And if I'm nervous about people arriving and I'm fussing and I'm grumpy, my heart isn't right. I should be anticipating and picturing every person. Sabbath hospitality is unique. So if I can just say something for a moment about Sabbath hospitality, we're commanded to guard the Sabbath. And I told Grant the other day, I said, you know what? I've thought about that for years, and I guard it from this, and I guard the Sabbath from that. But you know what Robin needs to guard the Sabbath from the most? Robin. I have to guard my narrative. Because if I'm saying to myself, this is too much, this is just inconvenient, I'll be glad when this is over so I can really rest, things like that, I have set the tone for missing a divine encounter.
I'm going to step out on a limb here and share a story.
Welcome back, Grant.
I'm going to share a story about the first time in our married lives. You may not remember this. Where you showed hospitality to a stranger. We've been married, it's about this time of year, 1980. We've been married for 5 months. And I was used to being single. I was in my 20s. And driving home from somewhere around dinner time, saw a guy on the side of the road and needed a ride. So pick him up. He smelled bad. He was a recovering alcoholic. He had lost his job, lost his home, lost his family. He had just been tried to find a place to spend the night in a shelter, and they were too full, so he's walking, trying to get to another shelter, hoping to have a place to sleep. Again, this time of year, very cold. So I thought, well, I'll just bring him home to my 18-year-old bride. And there were no cell phones in those days. And it hit me while we're driving to my house. After I said, well, just come on home with me. I started thinking, wait a minute, I don't live alone anymore. How's my wife, Robin, going to respond to this? And so I walk in the door and I introduce Leonard, who's smelling pretty ripe at the time, to Robin. And Robin didn't miss a beat. She welcomed him in like he was royalty, set another place at the table, talked to him, engaged him, let him tell his story. He got to take a bath, and while he's taking a bath, Robin went down to the basement, washed his clothes for him. He spent the night. In the morning, she made breakfast for him, prayed over him, blessed him. She just showed nothing but love and respect for him. And I sometimes wonder if that wasn't one of those angels. But I know I was married to one.
We agree.
So anyways, I just had to think, sometimes we can prepare to extend hospitality, but sometimes it takes us by surprise. And we need to be able to share and extend hospitality to strangers on the spur of the moment. And I'll just never forget that particular day.
Well played. That is character. That's what I'm hearing is character. Well, you're not planning this.
Okay, so I think we know this guy. He might have come to our house. It just reminded me, first of all, hospitality it can be a lot of work. I know I'm feeling maybe some of your thing is like, oh, it sounds like a lot. It is. It can be a lot of work. I mean, you have to think ahead of time. You shop, prepare a meal, you house clean, you make arrangements on your schedule, made it fit. It can be a lot of work. It sure can. It's a service to the King. So look at it that way. You're serving the King, not necessarily that person, but you're serving the King through that. And Donna's been really good at it. She enjoys people more than I do, I think. I'm pretty sure. I know she enjoys people more than I do because sometimes I'm like, oh, can we just stay at home, just us? And she's like, well, I've invited these people over, and I'm going, oh, I just want to be at home. Just us. So if you're feeling that, we can talk later. But she's thankfully really good at inviting
Hey,
people.
wait, I just want to set the record straight. 90% of the people who come to our home, maybe 95, he has invited.
Yeah, I have, but I don't know what I'm doing at the moment. But anyway, so it's a lot of work for you all to do, for anybody to do that. It does have great reward. Maybe not at the moment, but overall, it's really a blessing to your life. And when we were first married, single, I mean, no kids. I don't know. We had been married 6 months, I don't guess. We were in our little congregation, and there was a guy visiting. We were getting ready to all go home at the end of the Sunday morning service. And there was a guy there, was a stranger, and he was wearing bib overalls. Looked like pretty nude, old guy, a little bit heavy, had a beard, and just sitting there waiting. And so I went up. Hi, good to see you. You're new. Tell me about yourself. I don't remember anything that he told us. But he was on his way somewhere and was coming from somewhere else. And so I looked at Donna. I said, lunch? Can you have it? And so she was fine with that. So no preparation again, just like you. No preparation. Just, can we have more for lunch? And she's like, sure. So I don't know what we had. It was whatever it was. It wasn't like thought out ahead of time, but she was ready to share that. And we had a great visit with that guy that day. I don't remember much about the specifics of the conversation. But when we walked out, we lived in an apartment complex, and it was like second or third story. So we go down this elevator, walk him out onto the street. There's a few parking places, and then there's a 4-lane highway going this way, or it was 2 at that time. 2-lane highway going this way. And so he said he was going to the next town. And I offered to take him, and he said, no, I'll find my way there. It's okay. So we said goodbye, and turned around, and the guy was, we were young, so I thought he was like 60, which I thought was old at the time. But so anyway, we said goodbye, and we walked literally from here to Tim into the building, and I said, I need to drive him over He doesn't need to be. It was hot in the summer in Texas. So I turned around and walked out, and that dude's gone. And I could see that way for at least half a mile, Texas flat where we live, and that dude was gone. And we both looked at each other and said, could that have been one of those angels unaware? And you don't know. You really don't know what. But hospitality is the way that happens. And I would say it is hard work. Be careful not to burn out. You can burn out. Just pace yourselves. Pay attention. Pace yourselves. Pay attention to the situation you're in. If you've got a bunch of sick kids or little bitty kids, more things are going on than if you have adult kids that are, empty nest and they're out. So pay attention. Don't burn yourselves out. Watch each other to make sure you're not pushing each other too far. But allow the Lord to push you enough to entertain people. Not entertain, but to be hospitable and bring people in and love on them. And the Lord has blessing in it for you. And it did make a difference in our children's own faith. It is a big contributor to our kids' personal faith.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to be a little careful with people too. And my wife is very loving and kind and super naive. And she'll be on the phone and my kids will say, "Don't get scammed, Mom." And then 5 minutes later, "I got scammed." So she's so trusting. And there was a guy who came by our church in California, and he was looking for some work. And he had this whole story that turned out to be all made up about how his mom had died in a car wreck and all this. And he ended up was living in a home with some teachers that had let him stay there. And then he tried to assault one of the ladies and try to murder her and set the house on fire and some things. And we were convinced he was coming to our house because we lived down the street from that. He knew where we lived. And it was a terrible situation. And I don't say that to make you afraid, because I don't think that's the right path. Fear is not the right path. But to have that extra little antenna a bit for people and to trust each other. Yeah. So really listen to each other on that. Did that seem odd? And especially watch your kids with people. And if people touch your kids ever, to be really aware of that and let them know. I've had to tell people at times, "Hey, love you, glad you're here. Just rather you not touch my son like that," somebody we've just met. So it's okay to be direct with that, but just have that little antenna up, but don't be afraid.
Yeah, and that dovetails with what you were saying earlier about prayer and fasting. Make sure that you are more in tune with that. But the last question I want to ask for you guys to speak about is, so if I'm going to distill this down into, there are many lessons, many points to take home about this, but if I'm going to distill it down into one that we would end with is, hospitality is to first make room in your heart for them and then worry about the space. Okay? There are some people, though, who have a hard time or don't know how to make room in their heart for someone. Like, real hard. How would you guide them in that phase of it so that they can face the possibility of hospitality with no fear or insecurity or any of those things?
I think some people have a gift of hospitality, but I think we're also supposed to practice hospitality. So I loved what you said about prayer, and just if you're asking God to give you a person, he'll open your eyes to see who it should be. But I really do think every one of us needs to ask God, who do you want me to open my heart to? Because we're all supposed to also be discipling. And in our home is the space where we can easily do that. But if you want to start out by meeting someone at a coffee shop, do that. But make it what you would want it to be, that welcoming environment. You're still opening your heart.
But
I do
practice.
think there's something very important about bringing people to your space. You're sitting around a table. You're looking at each other.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, I would be very prayerful to and discern.
And
But
practice,
I
and
think we're all
practice it.
supposed to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
There are a few people in my life who I know feel insecure about having someone come into their heart and their home. Those are the people I try to open my heart and home to and just give them time. And there's a verse in 1 Peter 4 that I think answers the question, if not directly, then indirectly, because it says, "For the end of all things is near. Therefore, be of sound judgment," like you said, Matt, "and sober spirit for the purpose of what? For prayer. But above all, keep fervent in our love for one another." Because why? Love is what covers a multitude of sins and insecurities and unwillingness to be vulnerable and all those things. And then finally it says, "Be hospitable to one another without complaint."
And that love extends to yourself too. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you think will be good to share before I open it up to questions from out there? Yeah.
Quick point was Jesus was the host all the time, a lot, and of course servant host, right?
Mhm.
And he flipped those roles. I mean, he was just so good at that. I just keep going back to the Jesus example, trying to be the Jesus imitation, right? Is a hospitable
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm. Mhm.
There were three men. I was talking at lunchtime with some of the guys. And when I was growing up, we didn't have youth ministers or youth pastors and professional, people who did that full time. We just had deacons, just men in the congregation who would invite the kids over and stuff. And we went to their homes. They were hospitable. Their wives were hospitable, and they were hospitable. But three different men invited me in a specific way, and one and his wife just invited us to their house to play cards, to eat, to sing, to just hang out with a couple other teenagers. That was hospitality. I didn't sit in my family. We never had anybody to our house. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom was always trying to hide the beer, hide the drinking, hide things. And we couldn't have anybody at our house. So we never had, one time, after my dad became a believer, we had a bunch of people over, and it was like amazing. I couldn't believe it. But other than that, we never had anybody in our house. Anybody, except my grandparents. So I didn't grow up around it. But those guys, that one family invited us in. And then another fella invited me on his boat. He took me fishing. That was his domain. And I hadn't been fishing on a boat before. I fished from the bank and that kind of thing. But he invited me in to come with him and his son on his boat, a day out on the boat, and we went fishing. And another fellow would invite the kids out to his place for a hayride once a year, cookout, that kind of thing, and just have everybody around the bonfire and sing some songs and that kind of thing. That was hospitality. Those three men affected my life more than all the other teachers and preachers and all the stuff that was around me, which was good stuff. But those three men's values are my values today, on family, on faith, on the word, on everything. Their delight in me, and I'll talk more about this about kids tomorrow, but their delight in me, they're making me feel that they wanted me in that space, that close kind of space. That's what Jesus did. He had said, "I want you to come follow me." And there's something about inviting people to your home that opens them up to accepting your values, which are the kingdom values. And there's not much else that does that better than delight or in that invitational approach to someone. Hey, come be close to me. We would like you to be here. That's powerful stuff.
Mm. Any questions or comments from the bigger panel? Yeah, Brian.
My wife has a question.
He's newly married.
Basically, my question is, we're talking about discipling, and also I thought about long-time hospitality, so where it's not just, I invite you over for a few hours, but it's more like, okay, you can stay for an extended period of time. disciple you within that time. So I've seen this play out where, for example, growing up, my friend's dad would take men who got out of prison and he would put them in his house. But that dynamic affected my friend in where he learned bad habits from these men. And now as an adult, I'm seeing it again with men that get out of prison, but it's really, again, the children. So I'm thinking more just like, because we're married, but we don't have kids. It's like, where is the line or the balance between long-term hospitality, but also guarding your family?
Yeah.
I have a little piggyback off of that I've kind of been wondering with you two. I'm not trying to steal I want to add to what and kind of address that too. So it feels to me like our kids are teenagers, and when they're little, it's so busy. And then it just gets busier and busier, and then there's going to be a day when they're gone. And y'all aren't any kids yet, right? So you're on the front end of that. And I'm just wondering if there's seasons that it's hard. We feel guilty that we're not more hospitable sometimes because we have so much going on with two teenage boys. And I would be curious to hear how that changes when they leave. But I would be really hesitant to to do that in this season of life. But there might be another season where that makes more sense with my boys at 14 and 16. I don't know. I would love to hear you.
Well, here's kind of a weird thought. Isn't hosting children, your own children, in your home a form of hospitality? Because these are souls that belong to God, that He's entrusted to us to steward over a period of time. That's long-term hospitality. Not that we should treat our children like guests.
Well,
But,
no.
I think we need to look at this as a form of hospitality. These are souls that God made. He entrusted them to us for a period of time to disciple and also to teach us. I learned more from my kids than they ever did from me. And then after that period of time is over, and then they're on their own, then we can go back to different forms of hospitality, long-term hospitality. But I'd be very hesitant to have people who could be dangerous in my home when there are such vulnerable little ones.
Mm-hmm.
I had one night where I slept across the doorway that someone was in sleeping because I didn't really know them, and we had very young kids. And so I slept in the landing of the steps so that if they came out, I would be, and I didn't care what they thought about it, but I was going to protect my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was also going to let them have a place to stay.
Yeah, Matt earlier kind of referred, I think you kind of raised a little caution flag earlier, like be careful. And that's 100% right. And that's a great question. And I'm glad you brought it up because it needs to be in this conversation, this topic. And there's a time I look back on where we had a fellow stay with us for a month in our house. And I look back and I probably shouldn't have done that. At the time, it worked out fine. He was a recovering alcoholic, knew some of his family, wasn't related to me, but I knew some of his family. They were local, in the community where we lived. And he seemed safe, and he was safe. But I shouldn't have done it. I don't think I should have, even though it worked out good. That was too risky. And so I do think with little kids, people in your family who are not able to discern good and evil, right and wrong, make decisions for right and wrong, you have to be the protector. And so you have to keep away those who might take advantage of that naivete. And so, you have to be discerning. And it's not always an alcoholic man who's 30 years old. It can be a 5-year-old cousin that comes over who's just curious, or as a 12-year-old cousin who has done, introduced them to some things, and they're just passing it on. So when you have home groups, you keep an eye on those kids, the adults and the kids. I mean, even the kids, keep an eye on them. You cannot just assume they're in the back room playing, they're okay. So you have somebody in there with them all the time. You got to use real discernment, real wisdom. Have somebody or bodies, too, sometimes, in there with them all the time. Have doors open. Make sure there are windows. There's no closed rooms without appropriate supervision. And so you really have to be on your toes with the little ones, especially, but even as they get older. So much wisdom, much discernment is appropriate. It's not bad. It's wise. You just have to protect those who otherwise are pretty vulnerable to
I appreciate this conversation because years ago, when we were kind of naive, we hosted a young woman who was in a rocky marriage for like a year. She lived with us. We shouldn't have done that. That didn't protect our marriage. You know, we did okay. It didn't come between us, but it could have. So, you know, when we hang a mezuzah on our door, we're proclaiming that out there it's chaos and the rules of the world are inside out and upside down. But within these walls, kingdom rules apply. And we have to protect the kingdom so that his rulership is maintained and marriage is sacred and protected. Children are safe. So very important.
Yeah, know your boundaries and discern at what point, discern the right phase of life in which to do certain types of hospitality and stick to it. Like, especially now that you have a teammate, you're a team now, you can do that and help protect the integrity of your home and the safety of your little kingdom better. But you gotta think about it, maybe even write it down too. Yeah, Brandon. Wow. Yeah. That's great. That's okay. Yeah. For those of you who couldn't hear what he said, the Schatzes, they had known Kira for a long time, and she came to live with them. But even then, having that relationship established, they said, okay, if you're going to live here, here are the rules. Established a contract for her to sign. And just to reinforce to her, not only did it reinforce to her, that she's got to stop her evil ways. No. But it probably affirmed for you, this is the right place for me to live. This is a safe place where they take protection seriously. There was boundaries, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. Right. Yeah. Going back to the Boundary Stones document, it is totally appropriate for whoever is hosting a home fellowship to write up your rules of engagement in your space and expect the people who come into your home to abide by them. That there is a need for a very well established and understood and respected hierarchy of authority in your space. And it's not something that would push people away, but like with Kira, it would help. It can do nothing but to say, this is a safe place. This is a place where we protect souls. And we do it by abiding by this. And you're welcome here for that. Yes, Sharon.
I have a question in the past. So when you enter her home, there's a lovely basket in the foyer, and this is where your handheld devices live, because if you come here to spend time with me or make love to your handheld devices.
That's vivid. But yeah, I get it. Yeah. Yeah, it's all the problem.
There is probably nothing more alienating for me than when somebody is doing that.
Yeah.
You know, this is more important right now.
Yeah. And these are good things to establish, good rules to set, and they're for the benefit of connection and discipleship and growth. Like, no one would disagree with, like, oh no, I have to have my phone on me at all times. I'm just going to look at my phone the whole time I'm here. No one's going to say that. They might give up their phone hesitantly, but I can all but guarantee at the end of it, they'd be like, yeah, I'm really glad I didn't look at my phone the whole time I was here. So think about that in your home groups, especially the hosts. Think about that. Think about what those rules of engagement are, those boundaries that make for a safe place for the kingdom to thrive. Did we have another comment over here? Brittany? Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Or a place to sleep or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. That's great. And for those, just for the recording too, the podcast you listened to said that the idea of charity is less important than empowerment in God's economy, in the kingdom economy. Aside from the fatherless and the widow, right? Yes. And that empowerment would be much more of I would say even a less taxing activity to do in your home than the charity of the giving, the making everything all fancy and nice and comfortable. It was like give. It's like it empowering people can be just a word of kindness. It could just be something like a spark, like a little, just a match lit, and that can empower someone, which is much less difficult than all the things we think of when we expect someone to come to our home and we got to get it ready for it. We're going over time, but I don't think Grant minds because it's his talk next. Better right now? Okay. Was there any last words that you wanted to share? No? Somebody else had it? Oh, yeah. Aaron. That's great. That's great.
I love that your mom did that. That's one thing that we did with our kids almost every time we hosted. So talking with them and debriefing, because sometimes there's a lot that they heard or saw and conversations that we had. So that's so good. And it helps them see one of the things I think our kids saw, just because of the people that we did host, which we were very careful with our kids, but they weren't naive and going and thinking, everything's nice out there, or I have no idea the bad thing people say, don't drink, don't smoke, don't cuss, don't have sex. No, they saw this is where it leads. I don't want that. And so I think it's good for them to be exposed to some things, but to see it in the context of these people are hurting. and we can help them, and we love them. We love them. But there's always that debriefing.
I think that's something else that maybe we could write down is for those of us who have small children, spend some time beforehand preparing them to make room in their hearts, and maybe even say, hey, can you think of a good question to ask Mr. Steve when he comes over? And so they have just something ready, right? And then, so you're making time beforehand with them, and then after, debrief and see what questions they have, or ask them some questions just to kind of just drive that home, but bookend your hospitality with engaging them to be a part of it and help them process it.
Short thought. Remember, Jesus all the time was debriefing, wasn't he? Hey, this is what this meant. The parable meant this. You went out on the mission in Luke 9 and 10. They come back. I saw Satan fall like lightning. I mean, he was always like going back behind it, like explaining for them. You know.
Yeah.
I love that y'all are saying that. It's so good.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's give our panelists a hand.